So our next keynote is Elevating Customer Experience in the Age of AI. For this session, we're joined by William Niles, CEO of Brinks Home, Lauren Gangler, Retention Marketing at Brinks, George Khachatryan, CEO of OfferFit. And in this session, you're going to learn about Brinks Home digital transformation and how they use cutting-edge AI technology to automate and accelerate experimentation. Niles will talk about how they went about implementing AI and what they've learned along the way, as well as the results that they're seeing. Please join me in welcoming George, Niles, and Lauren to the Commerce Next stage.
We're going to push these chairs back first because we're going to stand because that's more fun, we think. So bear with us for the rearrangement. And let's start by introducing people. So I'm George, CEO and co-founder of OfferFit. We have here Bill and Lauren. And Lauren, thank you for agreeing at the last minute to join us. So we really appreciate that. So maybe, maybe Bill, if you could say a bit about yourself and Brinks Home.
Yeah, first, hello everybody. Happy afternoon. Pleasure to be here. My name's William Niles. Most people refer to me as Niles, so if you run into me on the floor, feel free to use that. CEO Brinks Home. I hope everybody in this room has heard of Brinks, iconic brand. We actually operate in the home with Brinks, so we're not driving around the big trucks with shotguns. What we're doing is providing safety, comfort, peace of mind to families, their pets, their children, and their possessions. So we have a real passion for protecting our clients. We have about 1 million of them, all 50 states, Canada, Puerto Rico. We feature intrusion, but we also focus on smart homes, so video. I suspect everybody in this room has some form of home automation, video, or intrusion. We are not like Ring or SimpliSafe. We're upmarket, essentially a luxury brand. Our customers spend approximately $1,500 to put a system in. We roll a truck. We're in the home. So we really, really, really value the customer experience, and it costs us a lot to acquire a customer, so we want to make that experience unique and special.
And Bill, before you were in a different type of video, right? For much of your career.
Yeah, before I got into this business, I really spent most of my career in media and telecom. We actually built platforms for studios. I was actually part of the original digital transformation of film libraries, Disney, BBC. Super excited to really, really bring a brand with that creative element, given my past history. Super big believer in brand and creative. So as much as I'm focused on unit economics, free cash flow, and all that boring stuff that CEOs have to do, at the end of the day, it's about the brand and the creative that gets us excited.
And Lauren, could you share a bit about yourself and what you do at Brinks Home?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lauren Gangler. I'm the Retention Marketing Manager at Brinks Home. And as Niles mentioned, we do spend a whole lot to acquire our customers. So my job is to make sure that once we do acquire them, we keep them for as long as possible.
Awesome.
One of our key metrics.
And Lauren and Bill, if you'd like water.
Thank you. Thank you, George.
So, Lauren, question for you. A couple of years ago, Brinks started using automated experimentation. Can you tell us a bit about what you were doing before that?
Certainly. So we had quite a marketing plan built out prior to working with OfferFit, working with George. We actually have a really great data lake built out that give us a lot of information about our customers. And we used that to do some A/B testing in order to retain our customers longer, get those contract extensions. And we were able to learn quite a bit through that. It was pretty profitable for a time.
But that A/B testing, was it all roses and unicorns?
No, we were certainly limited in our
is more like it, yeah.
Yes, no kidding. We were limited to some degree. We were very curious, as all of us in the room are very curious. And so what we wanted to do, we could only test a few variables at a time in order to know what exactly was happening with those customers, what was actually making them tick, move, everything that we needed to know. So what we found was that it also took longer to actually become actionable from what we learned. With OfferFit, that actually changed for us. We were able to test far more levers, far more variables, all at the same time.
What was your biggest frustration with A/B testing?
I would say the time it took, once again, like to come back and say, this is actually what we've learned, and actually, you know, I have Niles to report to and say, this is working, this is not, like following that bottom, getting to that bottom line.
Look, I'm the annoying CEO. It's like,
Yes.
Why can't you go faster? And when it comes to, you know, we spend upwards of $150 million to acquire customers, I've got to keep them for at least 7 years. So when it comes to extending their contract, this is extremely important to us, and we invest a lot of money in that. So the speed at which we do that, the efficacy of the spend, the return on investment, really, really critical. And what Lauren's talking about actually accelerates our ability to identify what our customers want, what appeals to them, and how we can extend the life cycle of that customer.
And on that topic, you know, Bill, you were a huge champion of automated experimentation and bringing it to Brinks Home. Like why? Why was that something that was important enough for you as the CEO to care about?
Yeah, I mean, going back to my kind of career in the post and entertainment industry, I realized speed, digitization, really was the future. This is going back, 15 years. Bringing that mindset into this business and actually accelerating the testing, accelerating the knowledge, taking the data and actually understanding what it's telling you. It's kind of like, it's a card game, cards speak. It tells you something and you act upon it. So for us, we had made a pretty big investment in an enterprise data lake, all the things I'm sure everybody in this room has done. We had really, really advanced analytics, predictive analytics. I had segments on my customers. But the real question was, what could I do with all of that data to accelerate that investment and wring value out of it? That's when we started doing advanced AI. George uses the term advanced experiment platform. It's the new acronym. But really, it is an advanced algorithm that really stresses the data and pulls information out for us to monetize.
And question for the audience, because as Bill was sharing, they were in the situation where Brinks had built an enterprise data hub, brought their data together and unified it, which a lot of major enterprises are doing. Like, can you raise your hand if you've done that in a CDP or in a data warehouse sometime in the last few years? Okay. And raise your hand if it's something your company is currently working on. So kind of a lot of hands. It's this huge trend that's happening, and a lot of companies that we hear, just like what Bill just described, they've unified their data, and they're like, okay, this is great. Like, now what? Right? How do we take this unified data and get maximum value out of the data? Question for you, Bill. The first use case where you set up automated experimentation was contract renewals. So for folks who aren't familiar with home security, like, what are contract renewals? Why are they important in the industry?
Yeah, like I said, so subscriber acquisition cost, it's a big upfront cost for us. So it takes us about 3 years to recapture that cost. Contracts typically go for 5 years. What we found from the data, and this seems blindingly obvious, but when people renew their contracts, they tend to stick around longer. How do you induce someone to renew their contract? You do it with good customer service, but you also need to understand the customer and what is going to induce them to renew the contract. We had about 60 cohorts on an advanced platform that kind of told us who was likely to turn, but we didn't have the ability to actually test offers in a more, again, I'll go back to speed, in accelerated, iterative fashion. So our control group was pretty good. We were making investments, pretty good results. We were reducing our churn, but it wasn't until we actually applied OfferFit and the AI that we saw truly, it was like it really was kind of Stone Age to the computer age.
Wow.
Huge difference.
And Lauren, like, very specifically, like, as you and your team were setting this up, like, how did you configure it? Like, what were you trying to maximize? What dimensions did you include?
Perfect. So and honestly through Niles, our main KPI was going to be increasing that NPV. So there were several sub-KPIs.
So you guys know NPV, net present value. We look at cash. I think the previous speaker was just talking about the importance of cash as a CEO, super important to generate free cash. We look at net present value. Are we actually generating real value? Which is a really important metric, I think, for everybody. But that's, Lauren, go.
Absolutely. So we had many options that we had to increase that NPV. And like I said, we were benefited. It was beneficial that we had already done a little bit of initial testing. So we kind of knew what the waves would pull in for us, but we were far more curious than that. We were like, okay, rate decrease here, free product here, new doorbell camera or something, but what actually would make a customer convert, and how far could we push it? So not only were we testing those offers, but we were also able to test lots of creative elements, not just your typical subject line testing, but many variables within the actual email content itself. And we were able to test lots of frequency, time of day of week. So many things all at once, all tested, where we typically would have been able to test one or two things.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you used NPV as that metric that you were experimentally determining how to maximize. And in a way, it's like a bit ahead of the times, right? Because right now everyone's talking about bottom line and profitability metrics, and I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience are having these conversations in their companies, where before it was all growth, top line, revenue, and now it's much more, hey, how do we balance this as well with bottom line? And it needs to be growth, but profitable growth. But I know, Bill, this is something that for you was very important from the outset. And in many ways, there was a culture shift, right, that when you became CEO, you implemented to refocus on those things 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, part of the culture shift was, again, looking at a customer on a unit basis. What's the unit value of that customer? How do you optimize that? I know that sounds really clinical, but that's the way you look at it. This was a way to actually optimize value as opposed to just extending a contract. We had agents who were extending contracts, and it was costing us money. I would joke to George, it's like we were spending a lot of money to extend contracts to lose more money.
Yeah.
So we had to change that.
I think you said we're losing money on every sale, but we'll make it up on volume.
Exactly. Yeah. So happy to say those days are over. What this allows us to do is to put guardrails up in these offers so that we actually can calculate the NPV, and the program optimizes. We can actually change the parameters for what we want. I may want more conversions, lower NPV. I may want fewer conversions, higher NPV, which is driven by cash flow and other working capital considerations. So it gives me flexibility to toggle and operate the business, which as a CEO is really, really helpful. And that's super, I would say, when I'm working with our marketing folks, that is a really, really valuable tool that they've afforded me.
Yeah. And Lauren, as your team started kind of setting this up and getting the insights back, what were some of the most surprising things that you found?
There were a few surprises. I think the main one that surprises the whole company, and probably several of you in the room, is that we were actually able to convince customers to stay longer, extend their contracts, and increase their rate in doing so. In some of our messaging, and so saying that we're a security company, you're safe here, guarantee your rate now, and we were able to have very positive NPV with those offers.
So you got rate locks to work, whereas before you were kind of having to do steep discounts.
Yeah, we thought, okay, let's do $7 off, $10 off, 1, 2, 3. So it was incredibly surprising. It's our most profitable, of course, offer that we have. And then on a lighter scale, we also found that, I mean, we've said personalization so many times in this conference, but when we had first name in the subject line, it actually decreased our open rates. It was almost like seemingly fake in that degree, but emojis performed very well when used tastefully.
And I think that was really interesting because there's obviously, like, everyone talks about personalization, but personalization isn't necessarily good, right? Like, it depends on the personalization. And y'all discovered experimentally that when you put the name in the subject line, it actually is like harmful.
Absolutely.
That was really interesting.
And it goes beyond first name personalization. Like, OfferFit allows us to personalize an offer, like which offer to whom at what time, all of that. So that is where our personalization lies versus saying first name, we know you live in Dallas, Texas. So
yeah, you're doing like empirically driven personalization, where you're personalizing the things that are proven to like actually maximize the metric. Mm-hmm. What advice would you have, Lauren, for people who are just starting with automated experimentation?
There's a few things. So I think there's something inherent in all of us in this room. Stay very curious. So don't hold yourself back about what you're interested in testing. Keep adding, keep adding, keep adding, and you'll surprise yourself, like I just said. Another thing is ensuring that you have your data and your reporting in a good spot, and you know what that key KPI is before you start. So you know a place where you're driving towards.
Yeah. And one of the things that your team, I thought, did especially well is you didn't just set it up and then have the system, run and do everything. You actually came back every few months, gathered insights, and then came up with more ideas. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, and again, that goes back to staying very curious. Just because we learned this was performing a little bit better than this, well, how much further can we take that? How much more fine-tuned can we get with that curiosity? And I was probably, speaking of thorn in the side, I was a thorn in the side to my creative team, with my curiosity. Let's add, another 10 templates here, another, small variation there. So, but it's been incredibly profitable, and it's been helpful for our creative team as well to learn what actually our customers want quicker. Yeah. So that they can inform other decisions.
Yeah, I just want to say, this is not to disintermediate creatives at all. It's actually the opposite. It gives creatives more tools to test in real time, and using different pictures, photographs, colors, all the cool stuff that I used to be involved with, actually gets to cycle through and to learn from that. So it's a really cool application if you're a creative. So this isn't just about displacing creatives with AI application.
So let's talk about change management. What are the things, Lauren and Bill, that you did? Because, obviously, it helps being CEO. You can just tell people, we will do this. But that doesn't get you that far, right? You actually need to win hearts and minds. So what are the things that you did to actually implement this?
Wow. So I took over this role in early 2020, and the first thing I did was, you start with the culture. I'm sure a lot of you are dealing with CFOs or CEOs who may not believe in what you're trying to promote, or don't understand or believe in it. So part of it is just, it's education. And in my case, it was actually finding the right people. So I hate to say it, I replaced a lot of people and brought in people who actually were passionate about using data and analytics and creative to create value. So part of it is cultural, and then driving that change through the organization. And I think there's some things that we learned that were counterintuitive that we would not have learned but for this exercise. So again, I'll go back to believe the data and then iterate and build on that.
And I would say, yes, hearing from the horse's mouth, this is a high priority item, helps with getting our creative team interested, but also getting them involved in the fun of how well it is doing. So saying this will help you do your job, this is helping the company. So that has been very helpful to get all of the team on board with this is a key rock that we're going to be focusing on.
And you guys were also very intentional, I remember, about setting it up with a control group and randomization and structuring as an experiment and actually demonstrating the cash lift and then telling that story within the company. How did you think about that?
Yeah, I'll take that. Look, for me, going to the board of directors and saying we're going to spend millions of dollars building some of these platforms, and then going to the team and telling them that we really need to rethink the way we A/B test, there's definitely some skepticism at first. So what you want to do is you want to have a baseline, and you want to have a use case that you can measure. And you want to be able to go back and say, after you've run your case, here's the data, here's the actual lift in cash. And so for me, that was really important to do, because I did have people that were skeptical. And in this one program that we ran, we improved our NPV by about $7 million, so an incremental $7 million of cash flow. It just was tremendous, above and beyond what we were already doing in that particular program. So to the extent you're fighting against the tide, against people who don't believe in this, my suggestion is find a use case that will deliver tangible value, because today for CEOs, it is all, we all know what's happening with the economy, so if we can deliver value, it's really going to go a long ways.
Yeah. So a lot of the folks in the audience are CMOs, and that's a really hard job, and one of the reasons is because of all the different stakeholders, right? They're CEOs, CFOs, and other stakeholders that they're dealing with. As a CEO, what's your crib sheet? What would you tell CMOs when it comes to data and experimentation of what a CEO wants to see from the ideal CMO?
The ideal CMO, yeah, it's all about, well, customer acquisition and brand is what I'm looking for. But being able to tie back attribution to the money that's being spent, whether it's brand, whether top of the funnel, it's critical. I'll just tell you, when you're in the boardroom and people are asking about brand spend and things like that, if you can't tie that back to something that's tangible in a use case, I think it's going to be choppy out there in the next 12, 18 months. So I would say figure out how to measure your spend. And there's probably a really good story, and tell the story. And then I think your CFOs and the people that control the purse strings will be, aha, well, this is great. That's a good return on my investment. Yeah. So that's my unsolicited advice.
Good advice. And Lauren and Bill, what's the next frontier?
So I will say we have some other use cases running that are like pretty fresh and new. So similar to the fact that we're doing contract extensions via email, we also have a very largely populated call center. So customers calling in with any issues, they're hitting our retention team. We provide a very similar AI learning with what the call center agents are going to be suggesting to customers, also promoting positive NPV. So we're heading into another channel. We're excited about possibly doing direct mail, SMS with the OfferFit. We already use it in some other ways, but also acquisition is huge. So we, as Niles said earlier, we are spending so much to get that email address, get that phone number. How can we nurture them to finally put that security system in their home?
Yeah, I'd say totally cliche, but this is, sky's the limit. It's like this is a tool set that you can use, you can iterate. We've been using it for retention. We'll move it into customer acquisition. We'll move it into next best action. We have a whole host of use cases. So really excited about it, and that's the future, George, I hope.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Lauren and Bill, thank you guys.
Thank you, George.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, and George, is there a QR code?
Oh, yes, sorry. If you're interested in learning more, there is a cool QR code. So, all right. Thanks.
Thank you,
Lauren.
everybody.